I'm Aleks.
And I'm Rob.
I'm from Novi Sad, Serbia.
And I'm from New York City.
I'm a Scorpio.
I'm a Taurus.
I'm a man.
And I'm a woman.
We are both very different.
And yet, we have a lot to talk about. So, you guys may or may not know this, but Aleks and I actually use this really great service called Anchor to make our podcasts. Number one, it's free. But there's also some great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcasts right from your phone or computer. Which, again, Aleks and I live literally oceans apart, so all we have is our phone or our computer to use to connect with each other to make these podcasts. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can actually make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, which is really great. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
It's just so funny that we were just talking about how we came into today's recording session and both of us separately were thinking, I'm so excited to record today, but we forgot what today's episode is about.
Yeah.
So this is what we think it's about. We think we decided to do it on language. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Maybe it was because yesterday's discussion, mowing the lawn.
Oh,
we were
yeah.
talking about something else, though, but
Yeah,
mowing
we
the
did.
lawn often comes up as a, why is this terminology used for cutting grass?
Yeah.
Mowing the lawn.
Why it's mowing and it's not like cutting the grass or...
Yes. Or even
Yeah.
like, what was I saying? Reaping, like, like the Grim Reaper with that
Yeah,
giant
yes.
knifey thing. But, and you reap
Yeah.
with that. Like anyways.
Anyway.
So today we're talking about language.
Yes.
I guess we'll start at the beginning. Well, I mean, first off, what languages do we speak? Clearly English.
Clearly.
How many languages do you speak?
Yeah.
I know the answer, but...
Yeah, of course you do. It's nothing special, I would say. I would say just English. My German, it's really at the beginners.
You don't speak any other language?
English and Serbian, I mean,
Yeah.
it's obvious, right?
I know.
I'm not stupid, duh.
I know.
But I thought, like, I speak 7 languages. Like that kind of thing.
Oh, now I remember. We're going to talk about German in the second segment.
Yes, that's
Great.
right. Yeah,
so
yeah.
you'll hear more about German later, everybody.
Yeah.
We're just ad-libbing along with this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever.
So Serbian and English.
English, nothing special. If ever,
Hey, you're bilingual. I speak English and I was taught Spanish and I was taught Mandarin Chinese, but I mean, ni hao, wo ai ni. And then I started learning German when I started working with Aida. Stop looking at me like that. Aleks, you're going to ruin this entire thing. Single-handedly, it's all your fault.
Single hand.
Oh my god.
Okay, continue.
Oh my god, you always say you're such a mature
No,
adult.
when did I say that? You always say that.
Anyways.
You always say that I'm old, so there you go. Now I don't know.
You're being young?
I don't know. You call
Okay, anyway.
you call me old man. I don't know.
Anyway, let's get on track here. What was I talking about? Yeah, so I started learning German, though, when I started working for Aida, because it's an all-German cruise line, and even though the crew members speak English on board, all of the guests speak German, so I tried to learn a little bit, but we'll talk about that later. But I come from a family that really cares about language and knows a lot. My mom knows, like, a bunch of languages. She knows English, Spanish, Dutch, a little German, French. Yeah, it sounds like a lot. And then my brother knows Spanish, French, Italian. He speaks Italian fluently because he lives in Milan. And then there's me. I don't know why language did not stick. Why are you laughing at me? Now I can see the good thing about using Skype now, for everyone who doesn't know, now we're using Skype in order to record, because we used to just do it over the phone, and now I can see when Aleks is actually laughing at me versus when I would edit, I could hear little snickering in the background as he's laughing at me for saying things. So now you're caught.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm screaming into the mic.
I don't know why.
I don't know why either.
She's screaming in the real life, folks.
I know. Well, now that I can see you, now I have reason to scream.
That's true.
All right. What are we talking about? This episode sucks. So what about you? Like, does you have some family that lives internationally, but
yeah.
Is anybody else in your family speak any other languages?
Yeah.
Again, I know the answer, but this is, for you listeners.
Yes and no. I mean, younger folks, yes. Older, no. So, and to be fair, like my father, he does speak German. He actually lived in Germany for a brief period of time, and he learned German in school. But English,
I remember he tested me when I visited you.
See, yeah, but English he never learn. But he understands obviously, and kind of speaking broken English, but still, since considering he never learned English, I think it's quite achievement.
Oh yeah.
And then my brother knows English obviously, so it's like my mom doesn't speak any other languages. Serbian, she's not into languages really. So I don't know, that's if you're I don't know, your mom speaks languages, and I think it's a kind of could be some kind of a gene or something that you either carry or not. I don't know. If I'm similar to my mother, I probably wouldn't speak English the way I do, I guess, so I don't know, is there some correlation between, I guess.
Well, I also have a hearing problem. I think it's maybe it would be categorized under a language delay for language period, because it's an audio receptive problem. So I can, when I hear things, I don't process them fast enough, so sometimes it's hard for me to return a response that's coherent, especially if it's loud in the room. But and so maybe that's why when it comes to, but also the big problem in the US is that when you do learn your second language, they focus more on teaching you writing and reading skills rather than actual speaking skills in school. So even though I had Spanish from K to 8th grade, so that's until I was 13 years old. From 5 years old to 13 years old, I had Spanish every single day.
Yeah.
And my mom also, my godmother is Costa Rican, so she would always send us books and stuff. So I would also have resources at home to speak Spanish. And for some reason, it just didn't stick. And I think it's because my actual schooling was so much more about reading and writing. If I were to read something in Spanish, I feel like I could figure it out with context clues. But and then when I was in high school, it was the same problem. Even though we had one of my teachers, she's born and raised in Hong Kong and then moved over to the US. And then we also had a foreign exchange teacher. So from our sister school in Tianjin, China, she came over to teach us, and she didn't really speak English, so she would only teach in Chinese, in Mandarin. And I still didn't really, for some reason, it just never stuck. I can't remember anything from those 4 years, even though technically by the 4th year, I was supposed to be speaking conversational Mandarin.
Oh, yeah.
And I really couldn't. Sometimes I can remember how to write in characters, but I don't know. So I wonder if the combination of those two things is what caused me to not learn language well.
Were you ever interested in Mandarin or languages in general?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I wanted to go to school for linguistics.
Oh.
I applied
know that.
to Boston University, and I put as my primary major I wanted to be in technical design
Mm-hmm.
Then my second choice was performance, and my last choice was linguistics. And I didn't get into the actual university, so I didn't get into any of those programs because I didn't get into the university in the first place. So yeah, but I really wanted to do linguistics because I have such an interest in, like, you know, in the acting world, I had such an interest in accents and stuff that I was like, if I took linguistics, I would be able to do accents better. And actually, I have a friend, my friend Catherine, her undergrad was in linguistics, and she liked acting too, but went to school for linguistics, and she would do some accent coaching on the side.
Yeah. But that's like interesting to me that you were like into some language but ended up like not really learning it, because for me personally it's like I guess like the way to learn something is like to be interested in the topic, or in this instance language. So I mean that definitely it helps. Sometimes you have to learn some things that you don't really like, but if you're like into that, usually it sticks, I guess.
I was really into it. I think honestly, I think with the Spanish at least, it was just that it was too basic of teaching and it wasn't enough immersion. And then for Chinese, it was a lot of immersion, but in order to get other kids interested in the class, we would do a lot of projects speaking English on the history of China. So I learned a lot about China, and that was really interesting, and I learned a lot about the culture, but the language part wasn't as focused, and it was very basic, because the whole idea, I think, was to try to entice us to be more interested in language, not realizing that I think a lot of kids would be interested in the language if they actually were pushed to learn it, like to practice it and stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. But so how did you learn English? Did you take English in school, or was it outside of school?
In elementary school we have 8th grade system, so from as far as I remember, 5th grade. Yeah, from 5th grade we used to have English. Now it's from the 1st grade, which is great, I think.
That is nice, because I know in the US, most places you start in high school.
Oh, yeah. That's bad in my opinion, but yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah. So that was and then I have it in high school, but there is a problem, used to be at least. I think now it's kind of so when I was a kid, for some reason you could choose like a German or English from the elementary school.
Yeah.
For some reason, some schools, people older than me, in some elementary school, they still have like Russian, for example.
Oh, God.
So, believe it or not, yeah. It was happening like that. You have like a German in some schools, and you have German and English in some schools, and then for some reason, somewhere you just have like a Russian.
Yeah. I actually think we have Russian in our schools too. Depends on where you are.
Made sense is like a 50s or 60s or even 80s or 90s if you're under Russian rule, or not 90s but 80s, right? For Slovakia, for example, or Hungary or whatever. But yeah, they didn't have that advantage, let's say, that maybe I had. If you consider English to be an advantage, I think it is. So basically then elementary school, then 4 years of high school. But it was not really in the details, like going into grammar. We did go into grammar, but especially in a high school, it was ridiculous how people didn't know how to speak English. So just few of us would just like speak English better than the other ones, and we were kind of, you know, when everybody is in class, at really majority of them are really at the low level. So even if you stick out a little bit, you're like seems that you're like great in it. So we all get the top grades because of it, like because we could speak freely. Yeah.
So we'll go into detail later about exactly how you advanced your English language skills. But something that you reminded me of, saying like that certain schools had some random stuff. For us, Chinese was, when I was in high school, was like a random, like it was only starting in a few schools that you would learn Mandarin, and it was kind of rare. So I'd say like generally throughout the United States, most of the time they offered Spanish or French. Those are the two languages, because in Canada we have people speak French, and in Mexico people speak Spanish. So it's like based on like what's closest to us. That's kind of, I guess, must have been the rationalization for that.
It happened all over the place here in terms of like years, and like my father learned German in his elementary school. My mother learned Russian, and my father is older than my mother, and then me and my brother we learned like English. And then I know people who are like few years older than me and like 10 years older than me, and then they learn like German or Russian. Doesn't really make sense. I think that like every school or every district or whatever, they kind of decided what to do. I don't know really.
Yeah.
I remember in my elementary school, English and German.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember how we pick which language, but once you picked something, you stick to it. I don't know what's the system now, but used to be like that.
I have a friend who's in England, and you actually learn French and German, and then you choose one to focus in on more, which to me makes it so surprising that in England, I would say in terms of language, England and America are very similar, with most people aren't bilingual, even though the rest of the world is. And I've talked to this a lot with my friends who are from the UK in general, but it is interesting that they learn 2 languages, and from that, kids still don't have enough advanced language skills other than English. It's kind of weird. But speaking of that, I work for the catering company, and we once were serving at an event in this really fancy school in Chelsea, Manhattan, New York. And they teach Mandarin Chinese and Spanish and English in every single class. And how they do this is you'll have your first day of the week will be in English. Then the next day, everything will be taught in Spanish. And then the third day, everything will be taught in Mandarin. And then it just repeats like that. So every kid gets to learn all 3 languages. Really put me in my place as the stupid caterer that only speaks English, and this little 3rd grader is like popping out Mandarin terminology, and I'm just looking stupid.
Yeah, the story of your life, you're always like not always, but you have a lot of instances when you would say and I just look stupid.
I know, I'm easily embarrassed, but I think the language thing does embarrass me. I mean, we've talked about this. It's embarrassing that such a large country...
Good that you're born in English-speaking country. Imagine that you have to speak not your own language.
I know. I am aware there's a huge privilege to the people who are from English-speaking countries, because there's this, like, world mentality that if you speak English, you don't have to know another language, and people really just believe that, and I don't. I really don't. I think I'm embarrassed that I can't speak another language, which is why I pushed myself during the pandemic to learn German. And I mean, I'll tell you how that's working out later. But so anyways, let's get back to you and how accomplished you are as you speak this entire podcast in a different language than your native language. So when and why did you decide that you were going to learn English further?
At one point, I just was like, I know English, I think, well enough, or better than like average Joe, let's say.
Yeah.
And I know that from my elementary school and high school, I didn't really learn a lot, basically, especially not grammar, because you know the story. But to explain, like the most English that I knew before I went to like a private classes or a private school was like from school, but usually from like cartoon movies and music.
Yeah.
And I didn't know like the grammar in terms of like most of the things I would say correctly because it sounds accurate correct. Yeah. So I was like, at one point I was like, I kind of know English by myself, let's say. So most of the things that I learned by myself. So I was like, let's go to like learn the grammar actually, and that I can have some kind of like a degree or something, like some kind of
certification.
Yeah. And like, let's explore that. For me, languages are very interesting, but only if you use them. Like, I think that I can learn like Spanish, for example. I also told you that, but I will not use it really. So
Yeah.
it will kind of rust out. So if you don't use it, it fades away. I was like at one point I remember it was like a summer, and I just went to the one private school to like test myself, because from the September was like new class was beginning, or like the new course, the new year, let's say.
Yeah.
And then I went to because of the grammar basically. I went to the intermediate course. Everything else, I think I was above, because like my vocabulary was better than people from the class. So I did that for like 7-8 months until it finished the next year, and then I went to like a private classes with her for like a year, I guess. And then I took the first certificate in English, which is FC, which is what, B2.
So what is the highest? Do you know what the highest certification is?
C2.
C2?
C2, yeah.
Yeah. Which you did take. You took the test, right? And you got like a 99 out of 100.
No, 90.
Oh, but hey.
It was 40 questions, so that means that I had 36 correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. I took a English certification test just to see how hard it is, and I scored a 64. So you know English better than I do.
Well,
it's true. I mean, maybe not in colloquial terms, but you know.
Yeah, probably like grammar, and I don't know. I don't want to say anything, whatever.
Which just reminds me of yesterday's conversation, which is maybe why we got so excited to do this episode. So on Aleks and I's first date, we were talking about, I think we were talking about language, and we were on a walk, and we were just talking about like words that are hard to pronounce, and I was telling him that like my mom can't pronounce the word ambulance, and for Aleks his was miserable. And so we like kind of like, you know, for me trying to break it down was also weird, because you really don't say miserable the way that it's spelled. You don't say miserable, you say miserable. So I remember us having that conversation. So then yesterday we were talking about the word vulnerable.
Oh my god.
And, oh my god, it was great, because every time that like we talk about language, I feel like I actually learn more about English than I did before. Like as you said, like with Serbian, you know, like there's certain things that you know that there are changes in certain places, but you don't know why.
Yeah.
Until you're like actually in a position where you have to explain it, and you're like, I don't know why that's that way.
I can relate, because my English for the most part was like, even when I was in that school, in the class before I learned the grammar, it was like, but why is that like that? I was like, it sounds accurate. So I mean, it's like, okay, but that's not the explanation, right? So
but that's like maybe the mindset that you need in order to accomplish a language, is just trust your intuition of, it sounds right, and if it's right, it's right? You don't need to know why, unless you're like curious, but it's not necessary to understand the language.
Hey, I mean, we all learn our native languages, but just by listening.
Exactly.
as a babies. I mean, you don't learn grammar until like first grade.
Oh yeah, I didn't learn it until like, I think like,
yeah, I don't know, like when the grammar actually starts.
6th or 7th grade, I was still being taught out of a grammar book. I had a class called grammar, ironically with the same teacher that taught Spanish. Ironically, both classes were very bad. But she was better at the grammar class than the Spanish class, I will say.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, you just learn by listening. You don't really need a grammar until you reach a certain point, I would say. Also, for non-native speakers of English, I would say, in my experience, one of the most important things, like grammar, would be like that you can kind of hear your mistakes and kind of correct yourself. Yes. But I would say the most important thing is like listening and knowing how it should sound. Basically, that's like a baby's ability to listen to their language and speak it without any kind of teaching. but also for non-native speakers not to be embarrassed by speaking other language, which is a huge barrier for a lot of people, for most of people, I would say.
I think in any language that's the case. That's how I feel when I try to speak German or Serbian.
Yes, because you're not speaking your language. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, for for English people or for American, let's say, there is a percentage of people that are never going to learn any other language, so they don't know the feeling. That's my point, you know. But for us, if you have to learn it, I know people that that maybe know English quite well, but they're very shy to speak in front of other people. In school, one of the first things that you do is to actually speak in front of your group, break the barrier, let's say.
Well, I think that's why in America, to be an immigrant and to be a non-native English speaker is quite the feat, because Americans are so judgmental outwardly. I wouldn't say like you're like, you know, if I'm walking around New York City, you know, and people are speaking Spanish, considering that basically that city is bilingual, multilingual, it's not that strange. But in certain areas that you get into, if there's someone speaking a different language, people are so judgmental if they're speaking the other language or if they're speaking English with an accent. And it's disturbing, especially since it's like, where does that judgment come from? Because you don't even know another language, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I understand why English in particular, if people are learning that, if you're a non-native English speaker, you'll feel like you have like this, you feel like you have pressure that you need to sound perfect. If I were speaking German in Germany, I will always have an American accent on my German, no matter how much I try.
Yeah, like most of the German people, I can hear them.
Yeah.
Most of them. There are a few that I met that have like American accent, which is kind of weird.
Oh yeah, that's like Bjorn. Oh my God, Bjorn.
Oh yeah.
Our friend, he's from the Netherlands, and I've said this to him multiple times, and also our friend Freddie, who listens to this, and he'll love that we're giving him a shout out.
Yeah.
Right before his big debut on our podcast later in the season, so stay tuned. Both of them. So Freddie is from Sweden, and Bjorn is from the Netherlands. Ironic, because you'd think that somebody named Bjorn would be from Sweden, but anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of a stereotype
both
thing.
Both of them have they basically have American accents when they speak English. It's wild, and you know, when I asked them why they think that that's the way, Bjorn said that that's the way that they're taught English in their schools. Like, it just that type of accent is what kind of comes out for most people. But also because if you watch television and you're interested in it, which is a big one for Freddie, that's what shapes your accent.
I mean, they're musical also. You can argue that maybe...
That's true. That is very true.
Yeah, maybe you can argue also for me that I'm better than other people. But still, when I listen to myself, I'm like, my God, the accent, you know.
No, oh, no. Even the people that I know who have listened to this podcast often aren't like... And I've told you plenty of times, you have an accent, but it doesn't affect your expertise within the language.
Oh.
If you have an accent, it's just kind of establishing to the people you speak to who you are and where you come from. It doesn't make you any harder to communicate with.
Yeah.
And you like can have a colloquial conversation with somebody. You know?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really like, I don't know, like grateful or whatever, but I mean, you work on it, so I don't have problem thinking in English anymore. That happened like a long time ago, you know. I would like have a headache if I speak English for the whole day, but that was a long time ago. Now I'm kind of speaking English every day at least. So that's also something that I don't... the only problem when you were here that I have to switch between English and Serbian in like split second.
Yeah. Well, and my brother has that same problem when he's on the phone with my parents. Not that like his girlfriend needs, she also speaks English, but like if he's speaking Italian all day, every day, and then all of a sudden he has to switch to having a full conversation in English, then... You know, it's kind of like, you know, that switch is kind of drastic. Also, I mean, to be fair, I don't think, have you ever been in a situation where you're translating English and Serbian so fast like
not
that
really.
before?
maybe like once,
Yeah.
like few years ago, like 7 or 8 years ago, something like that, or even more. But not really for that a long period of time. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of nerve-wracking when I have to switch in a split second. That would mess me up.
Now, just not to back up too far, but when we were talking earlier about how I was helping correct like pronunciation of certain words like miserable or vulnerable, on the other side of things, when you're trying to teach me some words in Serbian, that's exactly how I feel too. I'm like, it's almost like the more you focus on the word, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but people always say, like, if you say burger long enough, then it doesn't sound like a real word anymore. And it's the same thing like when you're trying to pronounce another word in a different language. I'm going to go for it. I'm really putting myself out there. And everybody who speaks Serbian is going to be like, this is embarrassing.
Yeah.
But, Hvala. How bad is it? Give me a 1 to 10 scale.
It's like 4, 5.
Oh my god. Okay.
No, it I'm just joking. It's okay. It's fine.
No, it's not. You're just being nice.
Do it
I know
again.
it's bad. Hvala?
Yeah, now it's better. Yeah.
Hvala.
Yeah. You kind of split it in two, and in one it's hvala. It's not like hvala.
Hvala.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hvala.
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 Yeah.
I actually just went blah, blah, blah. That's actually what just happened.
Hvala. Hvala.
It's fine. And you know what? I'm doing that, and I will not make you say miserable or vulnerable. Even though I know you have it, but I'm not gonna put any pressure on you because you have to speak English every single day with me. So,
thank you. You're a good man.
thank you. You're a good man. Everybody here has probably heard it 50,000 times, but guess what? Aleks and I worked on a German cruise line. Although you worked on it for longer than I did.
Genau.
Anyways, you'll hear it in a future episode. What we're going to talk about now is both of us have been more interested in learning German. What's really funny is this whole little global pandemic thing has made it so we have a lot of time in our lives. So when Aleks was stuck on the cruise ship for like 2 months, and while I was trying to find some fun hobbies to do at the beginning of quarantine, both of us started learning German. Both of us you had taken time out before to try to learn some German, though, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too, but not as in depth.
Yeah, so I started like, I think last year around, it was the summertime. So I bought online course from Udemy, like German for the beginners. And I started to learn that. It's in English, and you have like subtitles, but of course he's talking German, but he's explaining things in English. And it's very good because it's very basic. It goes like every letter and then numbers, and then it goes into grammar. I didn't still listen to it all, but it's very in depth. Yeah. It was great, and on the ship I started like I continued to learn it, but at some point I kind of stopped because I kind of started doing other things when I got back home. So one of the problems that I have multiple interests, so
Yeah. That was the same problem that I had too. Once I got into trying to teach myself during quarantine. August, when I found out that I would be working in Germany, I was like, I should learn something. I don't want to like arrive at a country and not even be able to like ask where the bathroom is, which is really funny because it's just toilet. But or ask like, for a cup of coffee, something easy like that. But as I said, I'm really bad with language, so it really takes a lot of repetition for things to stick into my head. But I use Duolingo, which, it's okay. I say it's really great in companion with other sources, because really all you're doing is just repeating exercises. So it's best to have like a little bit of background in the language before you start, which was my big mistake. And I didn't use the
subscription version. So the free version is even worse because it's literally like a game. So you only have a few chances to mess up, and when you're learning something, you kind of need to mess up to learn it. So I would only be able to really get in like 15 minutes a day and then I would lose lives, so I wouldn't be able to play anymore.
Yeah.
But then in quarantine, what I started using, my mom, like I had said early in the other segment, my mom speaks a bunch of languages, and she had some German books from when she was living
Lebanon? Oh, no, living?
when she was living in Switzerland. So she bought me some books by the same company. Really great workbooks. So I would basically work in these workbooks for an hour every day. I was also writing down everything I didn't know and what I learned that day. And then periodically, once I ended each unit, I would go back and I would take a unit test that was provided with the workbook. And I would also do almost like a study test with the notes I had taken to see how much I retained. And I did that for like 2 months, and then I started introducing new workbooks. With German especially, my biggest advice is understand some basic vocabulary. I mean, German is a complex language.
Yeah.
So, to me, yeah. So eventually, I actually didn't learn grammar until I got a few vocab words under my belt. And then I started recognizing patterns between, because they also, just basically the entire sentence changes based on the subject and the person speaking constantly. So you kind of have to recognize vocab words before you can decide any of that.
Yeah. Also,
So.
I guess, like, for me, it was, like, surprised that some letters, they pronounce it like we would pronounce it, like in German, which was not, like, I can pronounce some surnames, or which actually happened to be on the ship, that I would pronounce surname and I see it for the first time, I would, like, pronounce it correctly compared to, like, somebody from, like, England, or they would assume differently because it's kind of similar thing, let's say, with Serbian. I would say, like, it's more accurate to the things that you write and the things that you actually pronounce. So that was kind of my take on when I was starting to learn. I was like, oh, this is kind of similar. This feels normal, let's say.
Yeah. You just actually reminded me of a really important point, which is that when I went to Hamburg to learn the shows for the ship, one of the shows was completely in German. So I had a coach who taught me how to speak every single song, regardless of if it was in that show or any other shows that we had, because there were a few German songs in other shows. She taught me how to pronounce everything, which I will say, reading German as an English speaker, everything is pronounced like it should be a different alphabet. There's also certain letters that aren't included in the German alphabet that exist in the, quote, alphabet, like the double S, and also the umlauts on certain vowels, which we don't have in English. So understanding, and also just different pronunciations of the same letters. So understanding how to actually say certain words from reading them when I was back in Hamburg really helped me all the way, like, fast forward into April when I was teaching myself new words, because I actually knew how to pronounce them, even though I had no base to learn from because I was working from a workbook.
Yeah.
But like I told you, I think, again, my biggest mistake always is that I don't have enough practice speaking any language, and that's why I lose the language. So I'm gonna have to work on that.
That's a general problem. Like I said, I think that when I was, like, in Spain, right, on a contract, or later when I visit, I was like, I think I can learn I think if I'm here, I can learn it, let's say, for, like, after, like, 3 or 4 months, I can speak something. It's very interesting, very fluent sounding, like a very pleasing to my ear. But even if I start to learn it, where, like, here, if I don't go to Spain or Spanish speaking country, where would I actually use it? So
well, that's kind of how I feel now that we don't have a job working for a cruise ship. Why would I learn German? Because the whole idea for me learning German was, I'm going to be on this ship for another 8 months,
Might as well learn
And
it.
yeah, and possibly like I had a plan to eventually move to Germany to get into the theater scene there because I know Americans that have done it. But if I'm never going to go back to Germany again, which I hope isn't the case, I hope my job comes back. But it's almost like, well, why am I learning this other language?
That was kind of my thought exactly, because I was thinking that I was going to continue to work for a German company, so why not like learn German, and then I could actually use it on the ship,
Yeah.
speaking to other people, and then that will like progress.
Everything's just so up in the air right now. It's kind of frustrating to think about, and I hope I have a reason to speak German again. Otherwise, I gotta find another language to learn. But, I mean, I guess it's back to what you said in the first place, is language is important, and knowing another language other than your own native language is...
Yep. Also, well, if anything, it gives you more opportunities, I would say.
Definitely.
Thanks for listening. We have new episodes coming out every Monday. Don't miss out. We have a lot to talk about.